Listed.
You should be able to see in a few seconds.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of it's an easy sell. Yeah.
There, bro.
This is like
It's freaking me out on this. Look here. That's not the same link.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
That's my link.
So our customer actually during they thought that they had a lockout. So we started doing it to 747 fighter jet. And we can do that. China's more so it's more like counter type stuff. Really small objects that operators might not be able to see or wouldn't be able to track those things up super.
Vince. Si Alex.
Ay, hinahanap.
Ay, nag-export si Alex, ha?
Nag-export po si Alex. So, si Cici yung mag-handle. Bakit?
Mali yung link na binigay sa
Lamin ko.
Or is it because it's displaying that screen?
You are sharing. This is her places. It's not the same thing. I mean, if you share me that thing, for example, send me that thing.
It is? See, so what do you have?
I don't know. What link is this?
I don't know. You're freaking me out, bro.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
But you can see.
You should be seeing
You
this.
see this or that?
I see that.
Okay, so where's Alex?
Well, Alex. Is it? Hold on. It says it's counting down. So is it going to start after?
Oh, it starts at 2.
Yeah, it starts exactly at 2.
Even though you started?
Even though I started.
Okay, so we have to
okay.
Okay, let me get out of the way.
Yeah.
I will text you if I don't see.
Oh, 1 minute.
So because it has a start time, it actually doesn't display for the users, even though we went live with it.
Or because it's time waiting. So waiting. So you see the link is different.
It's not going to the same YouTube?
Not to the same URL.
Okay. Can you send me the link?
Send me the link.
All right. I will fix it. We'll just use whatever is working, and I'll have Travis send out. Yes.
Sending you a new link. New link.
Just keep an eye on the other one in case that, because it's 2 o'clock right now.
Yes.
What does it say?
Wait for us to start. Why don't you see if you can
Go into the
go
actual
back to
YouTube.
that?
I know, but where does it live? Like where? Oh, maybe this one here. It says it's live. Oh, right here. It is muted. Oh.
going? Well, welcome to the CDAO DIU Fireside Chat. Theme Speed to Scale. I'm Joe Coulter. It's a privilege to welcome Beck and Radha Plumb. They're both pretty well known to the community. But for some bizarre reason, you aren't familiar with the background of the intro. Radha, aka Dr. Plumb, she's currently the Department of Defense Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Officer. Came to the job with some tremendous experience. Just before that, she was the Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. And she came in day one in the administration as my name picked by Catholics to be her Chief of Staff, Deputy Secretary of Defense. She had a lot of major roles out here in the Valley with Google and Facebook. Hope she comes back. Was the senior economist at RAND. I've had a lot of other senior DoD industry roles before that over at Solwick and Tennessee and DOE. Interestingly, Radha's also deployed to combat zones. She was an advisor to General McChrystal when he was running ISAF. I got to see firsthand her have some impact there at a really tough time as a very young college professor. I was LSE, but Radha was welcome. I can't resist the temptation or the opportunity to ask you before I introduce Doug, because I was on the call with Doug, with you, when ostensibly you were asking just some questions about the job of DIU director, and I sensed that maybe Doug was being interviewed. I don't know, but why did you pick Doug, or why did Secretary Hicks and you pick Doug for this job to begin with?
Thinking instead of you.
I was joking with Doug that we have been jointly in a variety of different roles thinking about how to drive speed to scale innovation in the department between CDAO and DIU since 2021. So I was trying to pick Doug's brain, and then I was like, instead of picking Doug's brain, what if I just pick Doug?
Well, great pick. Doug is the current director of DIU, so it was a great pick there, Radha, and Secretary Hicks. Doug reports directly to the SecDef. I mean, this is his hood. We're in his backyard here, so thanks for being a great host. Most he was a senior VP reporting directly to Tim Cook over at Apple. Despite all these big jobs, he managed to be a captain in the Navy and deploy to a couple combat tours. A lot of time in the Indo-Pacific Command. 3 it is. Never deny him those. So I guess a couple locations, Iraq and Afghanistan. Doug, we really appreciate you being here. So I'll just kick right off to it. So most of us know CDAO and DIU, but for those who may not be completely familiar with it, could you both quickly kind of introduce your respective organizations, DIU and CDAO? Maybe
you go first.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first.
Okay.
So CDAO was really created from a couple of different pockets of excellence in the department. We had the JAKE, which was trying to do AI-related pilots for warfighters. We had the team in Comptroller Advana that had built a data and analytic backbone for the department. We had the chief data officer inside of CIO that was really doing forward-leaning data policy connected to technology solutions. And then, of course, the Defense Digital Services. So the value proposition of CDAO was combining these things could create a really effective flywheel to deploy digital technology generally and AI specifically. And it really has 3 core area functions. One is the enabling functions, and we have the policy writing and the acquisition roles that really allow the department to accelerate its AI adoption. We have scaled capabilities, so we actually maintain and deliver capabilities for the data and development environment backbones for the department on the analytics side and on the warfighting command and control side. And then we have acceleration teams that are really focused on connecting warfighter technology solutions and those enabling policies to try to accelerate in priority areas like advanced command and control, as we call it, CJAD C2 in the department. And so those are really the core areas of CDAO.
Awesome. How are you?
Well, so first of all, let me just say thanks to everybody for being here. And Joe, thanks for doing this. And Radha, thanks for being out here. Welcome to your house, because it's as much everybody here's as it is ours. So thanks for being here. It's actually kind of funny because reflecting on that conversation you're just talking about, actually the first time that Radha and I met was when she was serving as the deputy's chief of staff and I was serving as a civilian advisor and was providing a bunch of perspective on the idea of standing up the CDAO, what it might look like, and who you should have in that job. And I remember I had this one page. It was like, here's what I think kind of the key requirements are for a successful CDO, and here's therefore the kind of person that you ought to have. And she's sitting right there. So
Even Stevens, I guess.
Things all come full circle, I guess. So DIU, and I think, a lot of the people here could probably write this story because you're all parts of it in different ways. But fundamentally, DIU was born back out of some original conversations back in 2014 that led to establishment in 2015. I actually was part of that as a civilian advisor then to Admiral Winnefeld and then to Secretary Carter. And the idea of what was originally DIUX was born out of Secretary Carter was just truly prescient at that time in seeing that there was no way that we could meet the strategic imperative facing us as a nation. Facing us as a nation, unless we're able to fully harness the incredible capability of our commercial tech sector, kind of broadly writ, in all kinds of areas. And even then, we were already talking about AI and where that was likely to head. So he was very prescient in seeing that. Initially, it was just about building a bridge kind of at all and starting a conversation. So we had Tech Track 2 yesterday. Back then, Track 2 really felt like a Track 2 because it was like people from completely different planets couldn't even talk to each other. And the metric was how many meetings could we have when anybody show up. We then quickly transitioned to DIU 2.0 under the leadership of Raj Shah and Mike Brown and Mike Madsen, who's back there as well, and really the focus there is about proving that you could take real military problems, solve them with commercially derived tech, and then use authorities that were already on the books for acquisition to get them in the hands of the warfighter within weeks or months rather than years. We've now proven that a ton of times, which is awesome, but it's not good enough. Because we have to do now, and this is what we were actually talking about on that call way back when, is take that capability and apply it for strategic effect, which means that we have to deploy it first against those most critical operational capability gaps that we have to solve for to deter major conflict or win a force to fight. And then we have to deliver it with the focus, speed, and scale necessary to actually deliver that effect. Now, in some cases, scale might be lots and lots of things. In other cases, it might be incredible software technology that's deployed for lots and lots of people. And that's actually why we're talking about what we're talking about today, because that's really what it's all about.
Great. Well, the theme of this chat is speed and scale. Could you each of us, maybe beginning with Radha, talk about how the CDAO and DIU work together to create this all-important speed and scale?
From the CDAO side, we're really focused on getting things ready to scale to the department. So what that means, and we signed early on in my tenure, we signed a memorandum of agreement with DIU to try to codify this. What this means is we need to have things that we know there is a need or a gap for, and we need to take those things and figure out how do we make sure we've gone through all of the steps, whether they're technology steps, authorization, the sort of technological checks we need to do to deploy things across DoD systems, but also the acquisition rules, the standards and policies that ensure they're interoperable and connectable to other areas. And that is really the focus of what CDAO does. So we do that in analytic products by making sure that we understand what customers need and what the sort of decisions they're making, and then work backwards to make sure we have the right data infrastructure and then the right analytic products. We do that on digital solutions to make sure we have applications that can be developed and deployed inside a sort of modular and interoperable system. And so for us, it's really about building the foundation for that scalability. And we have two big ways we do that. One is through our experimentation cycle. We run a global experimentation program called the Global Information Dominance Experiment Series Guide. It's every 90 days, and that's where we can take technology connected to the operators and warfighters who need to use it, and the policies and standards and resources that are needed to ensure it's allowed to be used, and just test and figure out where it doesn't work, and then take 90 days to try to figure that out and then test it again. So that's one big way we do it. And that inevitably means some of the things we have failed. But the other big way we do it is we work with partners who are working to understand where are there gaps and needs that we know our warfighters have. How can we bring the best technology solutions to bear? And once we've solved that need, come work with CDAO, with those partners, to figure out, okay, we've solved the specific problem here. How do we scale this to the department here? How do we get this, to use Doug's words, to the level of strategic impact across the department? And that's really what the partnership with DIU is about. And maybe I'll pause there and turn it to Doug.
Yeah, no, perfect. We have this drawing that Radha and I put out together, sort of like this upside down triangle, where we're at the kind of the pointy end of bottom of that triangle, working closely with the warfighter as well as with folks who are in the tech sector to find those solutions to those problems that we've got to solve for. And then we work with CDAO to ensure that we can get those things to practically scale. That also means that in order to kind of dramatically increase the speed of that and the likelihood of that scaling, and one of the critical things about our partnership is that we can then shape those initial initiatives, whether it's one of our CSO projects or something else, in a way that it incorporates those standards and policies and requirements of various flavors for scaling that CDAO is shaping from the beginning, so that it's ready to scale. So that it's not like, hey, we've got this great thing, now let's stop for a year. We try to figure out how, what it's going to take to actually make that thing scale. So the more that we can work together across that kind of, that upside down triangle, the more that we'll get that impact that we need for the department, but the more also we'll be in a position to help all of you to actually get the scale that you need for the RI to work on the solutions that you are creating. So
thanks. So a lot of emphasis, obviously, on AI. Doug, how about highlighting some of the areas that DIU focuses on most in artificial intelligence?
Yeah. So I mean, we no big surprise. We start with warfighter problems. So we don't typically start with kind of a long, detailed kind of 100-page requirement list. That's not kind of how it works. We work on we'll work on a critical problem that needs solving in the way the warfighter thinks about it. And then we really think kind of, applications and infrastructure. So the applications, the buckets that we typically work on are forecasting, planning, and optimization, anomaly detection, and operational decision support. You can imagine all the pieces those are. And then we also will work in the infrastructure side on both data and compute, because we obviously want to have solutions that, encompass all of that, where you're able to actually make it all work. So we work kind of, across that whole range, and it can be everything from relatively simple ML ops tools, and just thinking about the most practical, concrete ways to make a real difference with those, all the way to kind of the most exquisite large language model activity, and kind of everything between. And so our team is constantly working with people across those different pieces of the tech sector, as well as the funders who know lots of them, in order to be scanning for where the best of it is, as well as then working with the warfighter to figure out where are those problems that we need to solve, bring these things together.
Thanks, Doug. Well, I think we're all interested in AI, and I think generative AI in particular. Radha, could you tell us a little bit more about how the DoD is getting after Gen AI in particular?
Yeah. So look, I think there's no doubt that AI generally, generative AI specifically, holds a lot of promise writ large in the world, and the Department of Defense is no different. Just to kind of put it in perspective, it's a department of 3 million people. We have more planes than most major commercial airlines, more ground vehicles than FedEx. We run a healthcare system with 9 million beneficiaries. We run a school system that's larger than most cities. We have operational bases all over the world that need to be ready for every contingency operation, everything from humanitarian issues to weather events to conflict. And to support that, we have a supply chain that's 3 times the size of Walmart. That's not even talking about the complex weapon systems and technology we need to have the awareness and command and control over that entire ecosystem, right? So it's just a big problem set. There's no doubt that we are going to need to leverage the capabilities inside generative AI to make us faster and more efficient and more effective across that space. So to get after that, last year, Deputy Secretary Hicks actually launched task force Lima, that was really charged with examining generative AI across the department and developing recommendations on how and where it could be adopted. That is now wrapping up, and we will be releasing the report in the next week or two, so stay tuned. But that will lay out sort of some of these priority areas per the findings of the report on what the focus areas, to Doug's point, working backwards from the capability needs to the technology. Once you have that, then the question for us in CDAO is that, what do we need to do to enable that to scale? And there's basically 3 or 4 things, right? One is compute. And so we're looking at where we can make better compute investments now in the dollars we have, advocate with Congress for the dollars we think we need, and make sure we have the right kind of underlying infrastructure to support it. The second is the AI ready data, right? So we need to have those use cases, look backwards at our data, work with our data infrastructure providers and our data engineering teams to manage our infra and our stack so that we have data that is relevant to the AI applications. The third thing is then we need development environments. We need to be able to bring in those best of breed commercial solutions into our DoD ecosystem, test them on our data, figure out if it's a lift and shift, if we need to do RAG, if there's actual fine tuning, and make sure we can do that across all of these different security levels. And then we need to have the applications actually work and deploy at scale to users who know how to use them, right? So that's kind of the approach we're taking, which is just work our way along. What do you need to be able to actually use these applications, whether they're generative AI powered or just simple analytics or forecasting, right? We need users to be able to use them. It should be almost invisible to them what the underlying technology that's powering. But for us in CDAO, the scaling investments we really need to make are in that middle layer of AI ready data and infrastructure. And that's what we're looking to do. I'll just close with saying, like, that takes dollars, and we know that. And so we'll be putting some dollars against this. We already put out a call for 40 million in small business innovation research that will be sort of wrapping up, and we got 400 applications on that. But we are going to be working on investing in these development sandbox, in our AI ready data and our data infrastructure, as well as the tools that need to come in that development environment. And I think that's the space where DoD needs to make some rapid progress in the coming months.
Thanks, Rob.
Can I actually just build on that?
Jump on it.
One other thing, just as long as we're talking about generative AI, I want to maybe insert into the discussion is, we all kind of as a society right now are spending a ton of time thinking about kind of the very, very largest models and kind of the march toward AGI and what that means. And obviously we need to do that. We need to lead in that space. And we also need to be really at the cutting edge and leading both as a nation and also as a department with the implications of distillation and what can happen with much smaller models. And if you think about the applications for things that at DoD we like, we'll talk about at the edge. In my last life, we would have thought about being on device. Right, and what that implies for use cases where you may not have the connectivity that you might need to be able to reach back for to be effectively in the cloud. That's a critical area for us to lead on, at least as much as we've got to be leading on those very, very largest models that might be training the smaller ones. So just a thought, and for all of you who are out there working on pieces of this, please work hard on that space, because I think it's going to get more and more and more and more important. So.
Thanks, Doug. So we teach a course at Stanford called Hacking for Defense. And one of my co-instructors, Steve Blank, one of his mantras is, it's about deployment, not demos. And I think that's, Doug, I think DIU's got the same mantra. Can you give us some examples of when DIU has helped move particular solutions from speed to scale?
Yeah. Okay. So I actually I wrote down a couple here to kind of make sure
Perfect.
that I was looking for a chance to kind of say a couple of these. So one is a project called Ammo, which grew out of a project called Lionfish. So I don't know if people are familiar with this one, but this is basically a mine countermeasures UUV that the Navy asked DIU developed back in 2019, went and did that. It was this very, very sophisticated UUV that had all these sophisticated sensors on it, was doing this very sophisticated, for at least the time, you know, kind of AI understanding of the environment with a bunch of navigational capability, for example. And then what we discovered was that in order to update that software, for example, with whatever you learned on, you know, on that particular op, it was a 6-month process of ripping the hard drive off, mailing it around the world, doing a bunch of stuff to it, shipping it back, and then sticking it into the device. It literally took 6 months, which is the most asinine, ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. And so what the team did was basically work with 5 incredibly capable small AI companies to come up with a set of solutions to this using relatively simple MLOps tools to take that 6 months down to less than a week. Which is still too long, but it's now down to less than a week. We occasionally be able to get it done in just a few days, and then we are now. So that's real, done on that set of platforms. Now extending to other platforms, the Navy as well as the other services, and working with CDAO now on scaling that across the entire department as a capability that can be used all over the place in all kinds of applications. So that's one. Second one is real-time information and effect. So this is one speaking for hacking for defense. So AFSOC back in 2021 asked DIU to help come up with a way of leveraging commercial publicly available information that's out there in multiple languages, scrape all that together, come up with real actionable intelligence, as well as kind of that can inform both operations as well as information operations. And so DIU put out a solicitation for that. There are 39 companies that applied for that. The winner was a company called Vannevar Labs. It started off as a hacking for defense player. They won a $75,000 little thing that led to a bunch of work that we then did with, you know, SOCOM, USASOC, McWill for the Marine Corps, you know, a bunch of other players. I think about $20 million in going into that through kind of set of DIU projects. Vannevar scaled with that and has continued to grow. They're an amazing company. And just recently we issued a production OT through DIU with standards from CDAO up to a $9 million ceiling to scale that thing across the entire force. So a second one, third one, Lilt. So this is, we're going to hear from them a little bit later today, I think. But this is AI powered kind of translation capability. Obviously, I'm an Intel officer, my part-time life, and there's no way to have enough translators to come pull everything together. This is a perfect solution for AI. So one of our CSOs worked with Lilt. They built a platform to basically help solve that problem. That's now transitioned to CDAO, where they put them on a series of contracts, now scale that for the entire force. We're doing something similar now. People probably heard of Replicator, the software piece of that. We had 132 companies out putting in possible solutions for the collaborative autonomy piece of that. This is a problem that if you think about collaborative autonomy across a heterogeneous fleet of unmanned systems, we absolutely have to solve. Is massively important for the entire department. We're solving it first through Replicator for that specific set of use cases. It's focused particularly on using the countering PRC in the Indo-Pacific, but it's got applications kind of probably shape that whole thing, working closely with the Navy through Project Overmatch as well as the other services, and very, very closely with CDAO, doing it from the start with standards allowed to scale all the way out. And then the last one I'll mention is a project called Gig Eagle that was actually born here and in partnership with AFWorks and a guy named Mike McGinley, who is sadly not here today, but I'll brag on the kind of work that the team here with him kind of did. And this is basically a AI-powered kind of agile talent identification capability to be able to find amazing talent that we have out there first, and just to kind of reserve talent, which I'm a little biased toward, but finding people who have incredible skills that we can tap into and then use a variety of different means to bring them into the department to go and do something. This is a massively useful capability. There's 4,000 active users already. We've developed and incubated this thing at DIU, and CDAO is just now taking this over from a scaling standpoint, and then we'll be working together with both of us as well, and in our kind of PSA, Principal Staff Secretary roles, as well as with PNR, the personnel readiness folks to be able to scale this for talent for the department as a whole. So those are all examples of it starts with a real problem you got to solve, bringing the best tech to bear, starts with a prototype, and then now we're scaling it for the department. Now, I wish I had 1,000 examples, not 5, but we're on our way, and we now understand what we have to do in order to go from that flash all the way to full bang.
Dr. I haven't seen DIU in its evolution. It's the pace and the speed is way better than when it was early days. So congratulations there. Radha, over to you. Can you tell us a little more about what you're doing at CDAO to evolve the models for intersection between government and contractor operations, to make sure that the DoD gets the best capabilities?
Yeah. So just building on what Doug talked about, part of what we needed to do on the CDAO side was really change the model by which we bought and scaled things all together. So the best analogy I can give is, imagine if when you wanted to get a phone, first you had to spend like 30 years researching and budget, several years in advance for it. And then you bought that phone, but you got to keep it for 30 years with the exact set of apps that were on it. And every time you wanted a new app, you had to buy a whole new phone. Maybe it had some of the old apps, maybe it didn't, maybe it met the specs, maybe it didn't, right? That would be no way for people to manage their day-to-day life. So what you want is a phone that you can buy and replace every couple of years. It comes with some apps or some basic apps you're going to use. Those are in it. You want to add apps that you want. You want to be able to pick the ones you want. If a new, better version of that app comes out, so I use, my step tracking in one app, I get a better step tracking app, I can replace it out. But also if I get a new phone, I want to just move all those apps and all my data over to the new phone without having to start from scratch, right? So what the Department of Defense did is we did that first thing. We bought the whole phone with 5 apps on it, and we had to keep it for 30 years, and there was no way to do it. And look, that can work for some things, right? Our hardware has far exceeded its life cycles. And if I told you for a home, I'm going to build you a room, and every 90 days we're just going to do agile sprints to build out.
We tried to do that with phones.
Yeah,
tell you personally,
doesn't work. Doesn't work. So it can work for certain kinds of things. It doesn't work for digital solutions. So what we did in CDAO was just try to really just break that apart, right? Then that means a couple of things. One, it means you've got to, I've already talked about these layers, right? You need the foundational IT compute and other infrastructure there. You need the data infrastructure and data stacks. You need the dev layers. You need the DevSecOps pipeline, and then you need the applications, and you need to create the procurement processes and the policies and standards that align to it, so that when somebody comes in at whatever level they need to come in at, whether it's a prototype and they've installed and now they're at the top and we need to make sure we have all of the foundational layers, or we know we need to expand a foundational layer because there are going to be new applications, as is the case with generative AI. And so we launched this effort called Open Dagger. It's a long acronym that I won't bore you with right now, but the point of it was to say, hey, let's build a system that's modular, that's interoperable, that has replaceability, both for the specific solutions and between the different layers. And that effort has allowed us to really accelerate what we're doing. So in the example of Lilt, for instance, we could bring it through our own government-owned DevSecOps pipeline, test it out, be able to scale it in a way we couldn't if we had to rely on third-party infrastructure providers' DevSecOps pipeline, and put it on one of our infrastructure stacks. And now, because that data infra is interoperable, you can pull that application through from our sort of enterprise analytics stack over to our warfighting stack without needing to rebuy and redeploy it in a vertically integrated way, right? And so these are the ways in which, rather than forcing the companies and the solutions to do it, we on the department side need to be set up for scale, and then come back to DIU and say, okay, if you're going to have a company that's coming to you with a specific solution, please make sure they have these kinds of APIs and they can uncover this. Please make sure they can leverage this type of code. This is the underlying data source, right? We can give both the policy and the technical specifications that allow interoperability, and that creates a much more rapid deployment cycle.
Awesome. Well, I guess for both of you, and this is an important topic, where does I guess responsible AI fit into the strategy? Either one want to kick off?
Yeah, I'll start. So CDAO sort of has the what I will call the lead for this in our Doug said the PSA hat, our governance hat. So we sort of drive a lot of the policies and standards on this, but those are built off of actually early day partnership with DIU, learning from how industry was thinking about this and how that policy could be translated into technology. So there's three quick things on this. One is, people often fret about whether responsible AI is going to make things slower or rule out solutions we want to have. And I think there is a false dichotomy that's sort of inserted into the conversation. The bottom line is we want reliable tech that comports with some basic standards and values, because either, AI is going to come, it's going to come and it's going to deploy in a range of things. We can do it in a way that's the way we're doing in America, which is what's driven major innovation and kind of the pointy end of the spear of AI innovation, or we can do it the way other countries like China or Russia are doing it, that don't have data rights, that don't have the kind of protections we want. And if we don't build a way to do it the American way, that's what's going to happen. And so part of responsible AI is laying out what reliability and what we expect from our AI applications in the sort of better breaks, make faster trained sort of way. But the second piece of it is that the policy itself isn't enough. And I think that's really important as we move into an era of sort of technology policy. I can write all the ethical, flowery language I want. And at the end of the day, if we don't have a test and evaluation and a model monitoring system that is fundamentally driven by the way we evaluate, deploy, and maintain our algorithms and digital tools all the way out to the field, those ethical principles are just nice words on a sheet of paper. And so part of the partnership with DIU and part of what we're doing in CDAO is really taking that policy, translating it into our assurance, into our test and evaluation, into our model monitoring solutions in the same way we would for drift and reliability for the other set of principles that we want to make sure our algorithm and our algorithmic tools comport to.
So I agree with everything that Radha just said. I would maybe just add two things. First one is, so DIU, along with many of the people in this room, and also the DIU people here in this room, has been, working on this concept of responsible AI for quite a long time, including back in 2020, the DIU team put together some responsible AI guidelines for, at that point in time, which we continue to. Now we have a PSA partner. So this PSA term that we keep using is there's something called a principal staff assistant to the secretary. So all the undersecretaries of defense are PSAs, and we are both now PSAs also. That basically is both organizations and actually people who report directly to the secretary and have accountability for some functional area for the department. And so ours is, for kind of that commercially derived tech piece, and Radha's is for all of the kind of use of data and AI for the department. So first is that collaboration and making sure that we continue, as we think about responsibility in this space, to think about and the trade-offs that are necessary in this space, that we're doing it with the very, very deepest foot that we can at the forefront of what the thinking is that's happening in the commercial tech sector, is a piece that we can help bring in, and that we're thinking about it with all of the kind of leverage that's necessary for responsible policy for the department in this arena, which is what Radha is accountable for kind of owning. We partner on that. Second point that I'd make here is really just on the concept of the concept of responsibility and speed. And I'll just say, I think, all of my friends from out here know that, and for me, like 13 years of being a senior executive at Apple, one of the biggest things that we learned over and over and over again is you do not win in technology on defense, right? You win by winning, right? You win by leaning forward and being at the forefront and out innovating the other guy. And that's even true on defense. So the best way that you're going to be able to defend against sort of the most concerning parts of AI is with AI. And so you're going to have, the only way to do that is by engaging, going deep, going fast, learning, making mistakes, and doing it in a principled way. And so I think it's really important as we think about responsibility, because out here, when we talk about responsible AI, for the most part, that's what we mean. Sometimes in Washington, what responsible AI means is, let's go in a corner and talk about AI for like a year, and then maybe we'll come back and decide what we're going to maybe use because we're scared. And that does not work in technology, because to Radha's point, somebody else defines the field when you do that. We can't do that. We got to win by winning.
So we've got a great room of tech CEOs and company leaders, and an even much larger group dialing virtually. Doug and Radha, how can they help? How can they help us win?
All right, so should
Yeah, take it off.
So first, just keep doing what you're doing, right? Keep pressing, keep winning by winning, push. Keep making the very, very best technology, partner with each other, compete like hell with each other. Just go. Number one. Number two, keep pushing each other that way, right? And you'll push as partners, you'll push as competitors, because that helps advance the whole ball game. And then third, keep pushing us, because we are working, and the team at DIU, and I know that the same is true for Radha's team, is I have never myself worked so hard nor seen anybody work so hard, except for maybe in Ramadi, where it was close. As people are working, trying to get out in front of how do we break down the barriers to make it possible for all the capabilities that our tech sector partners can bring to bear. And we know that we haven't got it all right, so keep pushing us. I do think we've got to, be cognizant of maintaining the momentum and energy and positive force of what we're doing, but we also have to, with each other, be able to push, challenge, identify what's broken, complain, argue about it so we can get to the right answer. Because at the end of the day, we're here to serve you in helping all of us together to serve the imperative for the warfighter.
Doug and Ramada, we knew we were at war, but I argue we're at war now. We just need to raise that awareness. But thanks for that. Radha, anything to add to that?
Yeah, look, what I would say is I don't think I'm breaking any news to say we know we're not that easy to work with. That's the Department of Defense and the federal government generally, right? Like it's hard, and there are a lot of rules, and the procurement system was built for a different time, and the budgeting cycles are not what they should be, and we know all of that. And we can fight the good fight to try to drive changes on that. Those changes will be slower than the innovation deployment that needs to happen here. So what I would say is, like, come on into the fold, right? Like if you've got a technology, if we've identified a gap and your technology can solve it, like let us just like run through the next wall and the next wall and the next wall, and we will Kool-Aid man with you through the walls. But it's going to take that, right? It's just a brute force approach until we get the system sort of transformed the way we want it. But the other thing we know is that the pointy end of the innovation sphere isn't in the federal government. It's not in my shop in CDAO. It's in industry. It's in the commercial sector. And by and large, it's smaller companies whose don't need to work with the department. They don't need to come to the federal government to sell their things to us. They come because they feel the mission and the imperative to try to deliver on this no-fail mission. We feel it too in the department. And so we've just got to, kind of hold hands and jump on these solutions. And that's sort of what we're trying to do on our side, which is we'll build the pathways, we'll figure out where we can, we'll try to create repeatable processes. We will have gaps and we will have misses, and they will be a pain in the butt. And that is just the reality of it. But like, come on the journey with us, and it'll get better and better as we go. But we can't wait for it to be better before we have folks with us. So
well, that's a great call to action for all of you guys listening and everyone here. Let's get on board. So even out in California, we realize there's some change going on back in Washington. I don't know
what you're talking about.
But how do you see all this work that you're doing evolving, this year, maybe over the next 4 years?
I'm gonna go for it.
And beyond.
Sure. Okay. So I'll start by saying that imperative that Radha just talked about does not change as a result of anything that might change internally here in the United States, or an election, or change administration or anything. The imperative is the imperative, and if anything, the imperative is getting more and more and more urgent as we get closer and closer to critical dates, and as the world becomes even more challenging, and we get reminded of that every single day in the headlines. So the imperative has not changed. The other half of the imperative, which is the particularly in the AI space, even more than many of the other areas of technology that we focus on, that capability set is accelerating at an exponentially increasing rate, and will continue to do so. And you put those two things together, and the intensity of the need and the requirement to get after this not only is unchanged, but it's getting more and more and more critical. Point one. Point two, everybody understands that now. We're like in a completely different place than where we were 10 years ago. And among the people who understand it, actually, some of the people who understand it most are some of the people who are part of the team that are about to be coming to town in Washington. And so, you know, in a world where there are very, 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 very few things that pretty much everybody on Capitol Hill, for example, will agree on. One of the things they agree on is this. And actually, one of the things they've agreed on is supporting DIU, for example, in our efforts to help get after it. So I think anybody who says they know exactly how the next, 6 weeks, 6 months, 12 months is going to unfold is completely full of beans. But I am very confident in saying that this imperative is there, and the need for all of you to get after it is there, and the need for us to be working with you to do it is there. So you know, what I keep telling our team, and I would say the same thing to everybody here, is we must accelerate through the transition. Just keep going.
I want to get on board here. I think we're running out of time here, so I'm going to wrap up here. But so just a few thank yous, Doug. You know, I'm personally glad that you're not a political appointee, and I hope that you know, your leadership is going to continue to be a national asset here for all of us going forward. Radha, you know, I've seen you impact policy in real time, literally in combat zones, and then later at the White House and DoD, and you know, got a lot of runway left. We're all excited about what's next, but thank you for all you've done for all of us and your critical roles in this current role, especially. But let's give our two guests a big hand. The rumor is you may have some announcements for CDAO, and leave that up to you. But after that, maybe introduce Garrett, our keynote.
We don't have announcements yet, but we will have an announcement next week on sort of our broader approach on AI investments. You heard me tease them a little bit here, but we'll lay that out in a more systematic way with some dollars and timelines, which will be really useful.
And you have some more things about partnership.
And more things about partnership. That's right. And in the meantime, though, what I do have to offer you is one of my deputies, Garrett. And Garrett comes to the CDAO. He's been with us for just 7 months, maybe. Experience at the State Department, in the White House, but also in the private sector. And he has a real ability to understand both the technology side, but also our warfighter and our enterprise transformation needs. He's going to talk through our approach on scaled capabilities and kind of walk you through what we're trying to do in the CDAO. I think that'll provide a really concrete foundation for the overall approach and what you'll see in the coming weeks. Maybe I'll turn it over to Garrett.
Awesome.
Slides too and everything. We know if this is have to click over here. Okay, while we get that set up, so thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody. I think I'll just echo Doug's point that your success is tied to our success, and our success is tied to your success. And I think as I talk a little bit about how we're trying to put this sort of speed to scale process into action, more of that can come out through that process. Let me just check one more time what we got. Is my mouse working, or I'm just gonna keep going? You guys let me know when the slides are working. First of all, thanks for having us, for hosting us, and for everyone for being here. My name is Garrett Bernstein. I'm a deputy CDAO for Mission Analytics under Dr. Plumb. And as both Dr. Plumb and Doug outlined with good measure, CDAO has this sort of unique role as a PSA and as sort of a service delivery office in the DoD. So that means, to make it real, in the morning, I could be at a Defense Safety Workforce Council, and in the afternoon, I could be doing like agile backlog ceremony grooming. And I will let anyone here who has worked at the Defense Department, you can guess which of those two are my preference in my day-to-day, but it'll be the second that I'm going to talk a little bit about today. So after being at CDAO for 7 months, it is a little bit like dog years, ma'am. I think it's been here felt a little bit longer than that. I've talked to a lot of leaders across the department. I have teams at all the COCOMs. I have teams at the PSAs, the 4th Estate. And basically everyone gives me kind of the same different words, but sort of the same vibe, which is everything just moves a little bit too slow in this area. I think that's true. I think that's a fair, there we go, critique. Let me see if we go. Yeah, all right, great. Thank you. And so let's see. It is true. One of our key issues is our inability to rapidly deliver capabilities at scale across the department. That is not to say there isn't an enormous amount of innovation happening across the department. For example, in-service PEOs here at DIU, obviously a lot of which was just outlined, the combatant commands across units, field agencies across the department. I'm not trying to minimize those successes and results. However, if you want to transform the world's largest organization, Dr. Plumb has that great spiel memorized about more schools than I don't have that memorized. I won't try to repeat it. But if you're trying to scale digital transformation at that level, we need a good defined way to go from pilots and prototypes and experiments to funded, widely accessible platforms, tools, and services. So this is part of the cornerstone of our relationship with DIU. Again, a lot of great examples kind of discussed. I'll try to get into some of them in more detail here. So let me start by saying, and Dr. Plumb also says, it's not easy to do business with us. I'll get a little bit more granular here, maybe. We do kind of make it hard to scale from an acquisition standpoint. We make it hard for new capabilities to access government production environments and data. We make it hard to meet changing cyber standards. We make it hard for commercial software to compete with incumbents and custom-built solutions. And we make it hard to understand who's responsible on the government side and who's empowered to make decisions. So what's the good news? We've been chipping it away at some of those problems. For starters, we have great partners. We work with them across the department. DIU, of course, has been critical. And we have venues like this to engage with partners like all of you, again, thanks to DIU. In terms of specific CDAO initiatives, Dr. Plumb announced back in June a new framework called Open Dagger. I'm going to actually try to say this out loud without looking at my notes. Open data and applications, government-owned interoperable repositories. There we go. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
I just didn't try.
Yeah. I'm not in charge of the acronym development in the organization, but I am empowered to try to make it real. This defined the framework by which we started setting ideal principles. Actually, here we go. And again, it's a small screen for those in the room, obviously, but for those online, hopefully you can see this. This defined the framework by which we started setting ideal principles, designing processes, and bringing these concepts to life that will help us bring more capabilities to scale more quickly. Because of CDAO's unique role in OSD, we are positioned to tackle some of these cross-cutting challenges from acquisition, policy, authorization, and technical delivery. We have all these functions native to our organization, and Congress has empowered us with a nexus of authorities to help drive digital modernization. Since announcing Open Dagger this summer, we've been quickly pushing reforms on each of these areas to include key acquisition initiatives like the expansions of our TradeWinds platform. If you have not heard, hopefully some people have. If you haven't, you should talk to Gwen, who's from our acquisition team over here after this. We also announced the Advancing AI Multiple Award IDIQ, what we call the AMAC, which is a more competitive approach to driving support, both software and services support across the CDAO. We made upgrades to our technical infrastructure on platforms like Advana. We're also building better connectivity between Advana and other platforms in the ecosystem, like Palantir's Maven Smart Systems. And we've made improvements to our internal business models and functions. We published DoD-wide data policies, but we're just getting started. To effectively move the department forward in the adoption of AI, we at the CDAO must align these principles with clear actions, processes, and delivery to scale capabilities. All right. One solution we've been talking through is what we call this sort of speed to scale innovation workflow. This connects government digital and AI requirements to tailored acquisition approaches and includes on-ramps and off-ramps for sponsorship and resourcing solutions. Starting at the top or to the left, we have a central place to collect, define, and prioritize enterprise digital requirements when they come to CDAO. Because of CDAO's track record for pathfinding with new and innovative solutions, a lot of the demand signals come to us either through partners coming to us in legislation or directly from the E-ring. Next, we have rapid prototyping. This can take shape in a lot of ways. Dr. Plumb hit on a couple of these, but we have amazing teams in CDAO that do rapid prototyping on CJADC2 issues, and of course, our software SWAT team in the Defense Digital Service, DDS. We work with a team here at DIU to bring innovative new commercial technologies quickly into a broader defense ecosystem. And of course, there are teams across the department building and testing new digital capabilities closest to the mission. I actually believe there is not a lack of innovation in the department. I think there is a lack of transitioning innovation to department scale. Regardless of whether you're experimenting with CDAO, DIU, or independently, we need to establish and communicate how promising projects can travel the various pathways and mature into enterprise solutions. Today, we use marketplaces like CDAO's trade wins that I mentioned, where since September, I think we have had 395 digital and AI solutions that are readily awardable, and 32 organizations have made awards with those solutions. Internal to CDAO, our digital and AI-focused small business innovation research, again, Dr. Plumb mentioned, provide opportunities to small businesses for research and development. It's our priority to continue iterating, evolving, and making these pathways accessible and transparent so people actually know that they exist. From there, we need a methodology and criteria for evaluating these new capabilities and a process to determine transition decision. As you see here, there are various potential outcomes, only one of which is a transition to CDAO. Some experiments may not move past the pilot phase. Others may be better suited for management by service or a field activity, and even others may remain, and others will remain with CDAO to be provided as a capability to any DoD customer that's interested. So pictured slightly differently, this pipeline should operate as a funnel. It should have a very wide opening at the top to allow for diverse community and ecosystem of digital and AI pilots to come through a single front door to CDAO. And I want to spend a minute saying there is a criticism that I hear a lot in the department, which is that we're too risk averse. I think this is actually a fair critique, and one that we're hoping to try to overcome through this speed to scale approach. But implicit in taking a less risk averse approach is the reality that not every pilot deserves to be at scale. Every R&D dollar that you all spend at your companies does not turn into a product. There are going to be times where we take pride in the lessons learned, we evolve, and we go back to the drawing board. A desire for the department to take on more risk actually paradoxically means more vendors will deliver pilots that are not scaled, that they fail. This is a feature and not a bug. We need to be comfortable with this, and so should industry and all of our partners as they come along on the journey. There are a handful of new capabilities we're working down this funnel. We're actively utilizing interoperable software stacks on Maven Smart System that I mentioned already, or the recently announced production agreement to scale the first of its kind tactical edge data mesh from Anduril. A bunch of other great examples were provided by Doug and Dr. Plumb as well. Talked about Lilt. We talked about Gig Eagle as well, which is at the start of the funnel, and it's working its way down now. We're working closely with partners that actually already exist in our stack. I want to be clear, like, this is new people coming in the door. We have a lot of incredible partners that are in the door, and we want to work with them to grow and scale their existing solutions that we have in use to other customers. Some great examples, longtime partners with us, Databricks, C3, Click, Salesforce, and others. So you're probably thinking, what does the result of speed to scale transition look like if it's successful? Day to day, you should experience more streamlined, polished business processes for how to connect to CDAO support, more widely accessible technical offerings like federated applications and new government-owned development environments, and evolving acquisition and budget tools and resources for utilizing scaled capabilities. Ultimately, our goals are, first, we want to take our platform that we're calling the Open Dagger ecosystem to 1 million users by 2027. We also want to drastically increase the catalog of digital software solutions to drive competition and expand access to the best software. We want to reduce the time to add or upgrade software solutions by 90%. And fourth, all CDAO managed scale capabilities should have the same access to the department's federated data catalog. Again, a huge blocker, access to data in production environments. I realize these are bold goals, but they're necessary to meet the geopolitical moment, adapt to rapidly changing technology, and deliver for our warfighters ultimately. Last year, Deputy Secretary Hicks said CDAO is a vital engine as we continue accelerating change with urgency from the E-ring of the Pentagon to the tactical edge to deliver at speed and scale. I actually think it's important there. She says, and she can deliver at speed and at scale. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive. And that's definitely not, we're not looking at it as they're mutually exclusive. This sense of urgency is our lodestar, will continue to be as we drive digital transformation across the enterprise. Again, I want to thank DIU for this opportunity to speak. I look forward to the sessions that follow this. Thank you. Was that too fast? No, I think I was right on time, 15 minutes.
All right, so I think we are now going to transition off the live stream